Guys, I've had these Shady Rays sunglasses for over a year, and they're still my favorite pair of sunglasses. They're so much more affordable than the $200 designer brands that so many people love to rock. And also the warranty's great. If I drop these in an ocean, just some beach somewhere, and I lose them, I can't get them anywhere, Shady Rays can replace these bad boys. If I'm at a dock, if I'm literally anywhere else, and these things break, these things get mashed up, Shady Rays can replace them. And they can do that through their lost and broken protection plan. Not to mention, Shady Rays also has 300,000 5-star reviews, and millions of people have switched over to their brand. ShadyRays.com to grab a pair today. And we at the Steve Dangle Podcast Network have teamed up with Shady Rays to give you an exclusive offer. Go to ShadyRays.com and use the code SDP for 40% off 2 or more polarized sunglasses like these. And try these shades for yourself, by the way. They're really, really good. Again, 5 stars from over 300,000 people. ShadyRays.com and use the code SDP for 40% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, for the 3rd episode in a row, we have to talk about someone getting hired and someone getting fired. We talked about Bruce Cassidy. We talked about Brad Treliving. And now we have to talk about Patrick Waugh no longer being head coach of the New York Islanders and Pete DeBoer taking his place for the remainder of the Islanders season, which, by the way, for those wondering, they have 4 games left in their season before the playoffs begin. And this all happened on Easter Sunday. CJ, why did the Islanders make this coaching change?
There's a couple elements to it. I mean, probably first and foremost is the fact that they've been leaking oil really since the Olympic break. And, you know, if you look under the hood, some of the defensive play and metrics in the way that they've been playing did not scream at you that they were about to turn it around and have success. So I think it's fueled a little bit by, you know, where they're at in the standings. If you look at their schedule, you mentioned the axe comes down on Easter Sunday, but they don't play again until Thursday. So if you're ever going to make a late coaching change and hope to have at least some ability to tighten things up, you know, they've got a few days here of practice, which is kind of unusual. Probably not what they want, though, because they were jumped over and actually officially were bumped out of playoff position on Sunday with Ottawa and Philadelphia winning. And now they got to wait a couple days before they can play. I mean, they're likely to be even further down by the time they next take the ice. But the third thing is the big picture here, and that's that Pete DeBoer, I think it was fair to expect that he'd be in some amount of demand as other teams make coaching decisions here late in the season. So what they've done is they've removed any stress that might come with that. They've hired him for the rest of this season plus 3 years after this. So this is a move, obviously, that Matthew Darche is hoping, you know, produces some short-term results that maybe they can find a way to win those last 4 games and get in the playoffs because it is so tight in the East. But, you know, no matter what happens in those games, they've got a, you know, solid head coach with a huge track record of success behind him that's, you know, going to be with this group for a long time. So, you know, you line it all together, it is definitely surprising. There's no way around that when you hear a coach fired with 4 games left in the season, even if it is the second coach fired in a week in this late stages of the 25-26 regular season. You know, I think it's also a big forward-facing move as well.
Curious to know how, I think with a team like the Islanders, first of all, you have to think of the future considering the fact they have Matthew Schaefer. And it seemed like this is a group that's kind of overachieving in terms of its expectations. I'm very curious to see how Pete DeBoer and Matthew Schaefer mesh, obviously Schaefer being the face of that franchise right now. I'm also curious what things might have been like between Matthew Schaefer and Patrick Waugh when they were together.
Well, I think it was nothing but positive. I mean, if you look at one thing that, you know, this has been such a special rookie season. You know, Matthew Schaefer now the most points ever among an 18-year-old defenseman in NHL history. I mean, that I didn't see anyone calling that even when he was drafted first overall. Obviously, to get drafted first overall, there was a lot of hope and expectation for him, but I think he's even blown beyond that. And some of that success is no doubt down to the fact he had a head coach in Patrick Waugh, at least for 78 games, that was comfortable rolling out there and playing him a ton of minutes and giving him some rope, perhaps to make some mistakes, because he saw that the big picture being that you're getting a lot more positive than negative out of him. That being said, Pete DeBoer was just on Team Canada's bench at the Olympics, and guess what he was handling? The defenseman, when he was there. And so, I do think that, the team's defensive plan, I'm not certainly, zoning in on Schaefer with this comment, really was leaving something to be desired, on Long Island. And so, you've got a chance here with a coach who's, I know he hasn't won the big one, but 6 of the last 8 years, I think Pete DeBoer coach teams have been in the conference final. He's taken teams to the Stanley Cup final and lost with New Jersey and San Jose. He's done pretty much everything you can do behind the bench, but win the Stanley Cup. And so, I think that this is it's an upgrade. Let's just call it as it is for the Islanders. Remember, it was Lou Lamoriello who hired Patrick Waugh in the middle of that 23-24 season. When he was hired, it was a huge surprise at that time. I remember kind of dropped out of nowhere. That team did get in the playoffs that year. They missed the playoffs last year, and they're, really in danger of missing it this season. And, while you're right, expectations might not have been super high for this group. They kind of created the expectation they'd be in the playoffs because they've been in that spot for so long. I think they're 10-0 since the Olympics got back. So that's, definitely in the bottom third or even worse of the league. And they've slipped out of playoff position because of it. So, I don't know if this is the start of a new trend or if it's kind of a coincidence that you've seen the Cassidy Tortorella move in Vegas and now this one this late in the year. But, as much as we can say it doesn't matter, there's financial implications. I think you don't want to wait another year if you can avoid it for Matthew Schaefer to get his playoff experience plus other players on that team. Ilya Sorokin's had a great year for them in net, and he's helped maybe, patch up some of the, spotty defensive play. You want to reward someone like that with playoff games. So, it's still possible for them, but man, very little margin for error for really any of these teams, go down the list. Columbus, Washington, Philadelphia, your Ottawa Senators there in the nation's capital of Canada. A bunch of teams in that cluster that are separated by a point or two. And one of them or two of them are going to finish 4-1 or something like that. And that's might be good enough to get in. And we'll see. Look, the Islanders are hoping for that new coach bump. Sometimes you see a team reel off a few wins after this. And big picture though, Pete DeBoer, his phone already rang a little bit, I think, during the season before this, but it was definitely going to be ringing in the next few weeks as teams make some decisions behind the bench. Would expect a few coaches around the league will be fired either after the regular season or maybe after round one if their teams fall a little short of expectations. So, the Islanders don't even have to worry about getting in any kind of sweepstakes or anything like that. They got their man already.
Yeah, in thinking of all these different coaches, I was ready to have this be about Bruce Cassidy, who was fired from the Vegas Golden Knights a couple days ago. John Tortorella, by the way, a perfect 3-0-0 since taking over behind the bench in Vegas. I have to imagine his phone, if it's not blowing up, there are definitely at least a few people who are thinking about Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah, and don't forget Peter Laviolette's out there, hasn't worked this season after being with the Rangers. So, I think there are other veteran coaches and look, it's the nature of the game. Like I see the comments online and I think there's something to it. Because you have a young coach like Dan Muse, for example, in Pittsburgh, get the opportunity this year and they've had, an unexpectedly strong season. And so credit to him, a younger mind, new ideas, new, fresh coach, fresh paint behind the bench there. But, a lot of teams when they're making a call and especially general manager here, this is Matthew Darsh's first, decision with the coach. He inherited Patrick Waugh when he took over as GM last year. I think it's hard to not go with some experience. You know what I mean? I think that's the line you walk is, John Cooper was inexperienced when he got hired by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Came up from the AHL in the 2012-13 season. It was his first NHL games. He's still coaching them. It's insane. Basically everyone has to get their first job somewhere, and that includes the best coaches out there. But, I think for a lot of GMs, there's comfort in going to, people that have done it before, that have a lot of experience, that will come in with a steady hand, and they're not learning on the job in any way, shape, or form. At this point in time, Pete DeBoer's had other than that, he was very involved in the Olympic experience for Team Canada. He's had the year to watch the league, right? And presumably he's going to come in fresh and ready to go, and kind of crazy. It's 4 games or maybe a lot more than that. And so, I think you're going to see those veteran coaches, is what I'm getting at, get new opportunities, even though, sometimes I think people want new blood behind the bench. It can be a risk for a coach to do that. I mean, even Bruce Cassidy, he was the Washington Capitals coach when I was like a kid, I feel like, and had a long experience after that where he had to be an assistant. He had to be an American Hockey League coach for a lot of years. But he coached Jaromir Jagr, if you can believe it, all the way back in Washington. And it wasn't for a little while yet after that before he was ready to thrive as an NHL head coach. So, that's the risk you run, I think, with, going to newer faces and what we've seen so far. I mean, Tortorella, Bonus, Pete DeBoer, those are the last 3 guys hired, with these in-season moves. They all share one thing in common. They've coached a lot of games. They have a lot of experience, and they're older coaches that I think come with a certain amount of predictability for the GMs hiring them.
That being said, though, I mean, you mentioned John Cooper. I mean, he's been in that job for 13 years. Bednar's a first-time head coach when he got his opportunity in Colorado. Rod Brindamore had never coached in the NHL before. He's still in Carolina. Andre Tourigny, never an NHL head coach. Marty St. Louis, people are wondering about his chances at the Jack Adams. There's a chance the Canadiens could still win that division. Spencer Carberry, who was coached around, but he's in his first head coaching gig. Like, there's some reward if you want a first timer in that role, depending on who you are, depending on where you're at as an NHL team too. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you tend to see the younger head coaches go with kind of rebuilding teams or retooling teams. That's even where Pittsburgh is. I mean, they obviously have these franchise legends that everyone knows, but this is a year where they've turned the keys over they've got a Ben Kindle on their roster. They've got a lot of younger players. And so I think it makes sense to hire a younger coach with your team. I mean, even the year that John Cooper was hired by the Lightning, they were kind of in a rebuild. It was the lockout shortened year that year, 12-13. But he got the last, handful of games at the end of that season. They missed the playoffs by a bunch. And then they reloaded and became a team 2 years later that was in the Stanley Cup final in 2015 and has gone on this run. So, I think you're less likely. I guess I don't know where I place the Islanders on that timeline because they did miss the playoffs last year, but they still have pretty old lineup. I think over time here, they're going to be turning it over more. We've started to see them do that. The Matt Martins, the Cal Clutterbucks. I mean, guys that were part of that team for a long time have slowly started to move into retirement and are still around the team. But I guess there's not a one size fits all solution here is the true measure. And, if we look at a team, I don't want to start speculating, but some of the teams that are going to change coaches likely, whether we'll see what happens in Toronto with Craig Berube, if Edmonton doesn't go on a playoff run, is there going to be, more heat on Chris Knobloch? I think some of these places, those are the types of teams. They're not young teams, right? And I think the idea of if any changes happen there, those are changes designed to get back to winning right away as soon as possible. So, those are probably better spots for more experienced coaches. And, look, Bruce Cassidy also has the option to do what Pete DeBoer did. He sat out most of the season and waited for a chance to jump back in a year later. I mean, Pete DeBoer is under contract to the Golden Knights, would still be getting paid next year, whether he works or not. And so, I think there's also that, that option that you don't have to just take a job if you don't feel like the fit is right and if you're in his shoes.
I was literally watching Pete DeBoer on a podcast last week. Not to say you can't get a job if you're on a podcast, but it was just funny just thinking.
He did a lot of media this year. He actually,
yeah, absolutely.
He jumped around podcasts. He was on Overdrive a fair bit in Toronto, the TSN radio show. I think he put himself out there. I think that's also smart. People, kind of front of mind, and why not? I'm not aware of anything he said. I'm sure someone on the internet is going back and finding everything he said about the Islanders throughout the year or whatever, because I guess that would be the only downside is if you speak too candidly about a situation, all of a sudden you find yourself the coach. But I think, look, that's been a trend of the week, actually. And it's a little different when you're not employed by that. But when you're not employed by that team, when you make those comments, I mean, I think it's all fair game in today's day and age.
So I wonder, as an extension of that, is that purposeful when, if you're a guy like Pete DeBoer And you should be a hot commodity around the league for an opportunity, but being front of mind by making these podcast and radio appearances. Like, have you ever heard stories of like other coaches doing similar stuff where it's like, yeah, I like doing those radio appearances because I'm in the media, I'm top of mind, and maybe some GM will catch some media appearance I did and be like, oh yeah, right, we should hire this guy. Like, I don't know if that's actually something that works in their favor or if it's just something that they just kind of see as, for fun.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, maybe not for every last individual who does it, but, think over the years. I mean, John Tortorella did TV up in Canada even before he's been on ESPN. You see a lot of coaches between gigs, make appearance on a trade deadline show or a July 1st show for Free Agent Frenzy. Do these kind of radio hits. I think it does. First of all, it keeps you involved in the game, right? It gives you a reason. If you're having to comment on what's going on around the league, it gives you an extra reason to be, dig in and keep following what's happening there. And then, I think just by the nature of it, people are thinking about you and seeing you. And sometimes it sounds weird. I think it can be that simple that, I'm not saying Kelly McCrimmon was watching ESPN and was like, oh, I got to hire John Tortorella. I mean, I think obviously when he's making the coaching change he did in Vegas, he's thinking of all the people that would fit the criteria he's looking for, and Tortorella best suited that. But, I really don't think it hurts to be out there. And then, as I mentioned, there's just an element of, these guys, like, very few people in hockey work harder than the head coaches or the coaching staffs around the league. I mean, just consider the hours of, when the games are played, the travel that happens, and then they break down the games between, a game is played on a Tuesday night. The coaching staff has broken that down and is back at practice on Wednesday trying to instruct based on what happened in the game. I mean, there's just, coaches don't have enough hours in the day. What I'm getting at is you go from that lifestyle and some of these guys, I mean, Pete DeBoer is coached in the NHL for like 20 plus years in a row. They're not accustomed to having all this free time. And so I think that, staying involved in the game and keeping fresh and doing some media doesn't hurt in terms of lining up your next gig.
Okay. One last question about the New York Islanders. And I'm going to use this as a segue to talk about the general playoff race. The Islanders, as we've mentioned, 4 games left in their season. They're not playing again till Thursday. They've been bumped out of a playoff spot. They have Toronto on Thursday. They have Ottawa on Saturday, the Canadiens on Sunday, and then next Tuesday to end their season, they're against the Carolina Hurricanes. All 4 of those games are at home, but they do have to wait a while until they play again. How do you like their playoff chances, even if maybe they stand to have some effects of the new coach bump?
It's so tough to handicap. Like, I don't have a lot of feelings about any of these teams. Like, I can't tell, because it comes down to like who's going to win 3 of their last 4 or 4 of their last 4. Like, that's when you have that many teams tied. I think it should be a positive thing to play those games at home. It should be a positive team that you start Thursday against the Leafs. The Leafs are on the back half of a back-to-back Thursday, traveling in. You're going to be well rested. Like, in theory, that's a very winnable game. The Ottawa game is going to be huge just because those teams are so close, and we'll see where they're at by the time it's played next weekend. But then you're getting into a 3 and 4 situation Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Not going to be easy. And then Tuesday, 4 and 6 to finish. I mean, the odds are stacked against them, frankly, I think, because they've played the most amount of games and, they've actually just been knocked out. But, if they run the table, I would think another 8 points gets them in from here. I'd be surprised, I guess, if they won them all and didn't get in. So they control their destiny, which is, I think, all any of those teams can ask for when you get this late in the game. But this East playoff race in particular is going down to the wire. Same in the West, just lower point totals for the teams that are chasing it. And as much as we've banged on about the playoff format and this and that, I mean, what is irrefutable is that if you're the NHL's head office and you've got 10 days left in the season, I mean, we've got some pretty heated playoff races and games that are going to carry huge consequences to be played here in the next week and a half.
Hey, look, whether it's going to be 1 through 8 or this format, playoff races happen all the time. But yes, I'm very happy that we at least have some playoff races and teams to talk about who are trying to get in. I do want to spend a moment on one team that got in to the playoffs over the weekend and broke a 15-year playoff drought. The last time the Buffalo Sabres were in the playoffs, I was in high school. Lord knows what you were doing 15 years ago, but the Buffalo Sabres did it.
They did it, and the keen listeners of our show shouldn't be surprised because it was foretold on the CJ show that this was going to be a Sabres playoff year.
I don't have a crystal ball. Predictions I don't do, but this is the one thing you're like, hey, man, I did this. I called this. You see this? This is me.
I did call it, and I'm not gonna apologize for calling one right. And I'll just say,
should you?
All it was though was I just kept looking at their roster and thinking this team is too good to stay down. Like that, there was not a lot of advanced projection there. This wasn't like the CJ model. It didn't spit out, here are the 8 playoff teams. It's just, I kept looking at the team and was like, it makes no sense that they're where they've been. And look, it took, for some reason, a change of GM, even though the roster didn't change at that moment, but really sparked them in December. They started a winning run and they haven't stopped. Now the Atlantic Division's still there to be contested, but the Sabres, the Canadians, and the Lightning, I think all 3 still are in the mix potentially to win the division. Whether they end up in the first, second, or third slot, though, I know the people of Buffalo are going to be ready for the moment. Roughly a little less than 2 weeks from now, when they get to host a playoff game for the first time in that amount of time, and it's great for that city. I think the team is a pretty exciting team to watch. I mean, they are not buttoned down defensively. Like I will say this. I don't foresee them going on a long playoff run. If we're making predictions, we'll have to see the matchups. I'm not saying they can't win a round or something like that, but they don't play a style that hints at what's a long playoff run. But they also, they played an 8-7 game that we talked about a fair bit against Tampa, and they are, pretty exciting at times too. So, I think between the emotion of the city and the building and just the excitement of the players getting back in the playoffs, I mean, whoever they play in the first round, whether it ends up being Montreal or someone else, I think it'll be a pretty fun series to watch.
Not asking for a prediction, but just for an FYI, yes, the Sabres and the Canadians, if the playoffs began today, they would meet each other in the first round. That could be really fun if we actually get that come April 8th. An
old Adams division matchup for fans of a certain vintage. Not to mention,
I think we're Northeast than Adams. I'm Northeast.
I'm taking
Southeast.
It back to like the early 90s, man. I'm taking it back to like starter jackets and lime green T-shirts or whatever else was going on in that.
You seem like you had did you have a starter jacket back in the day?
I did not, but they were cool in my era.
You didn't have one?
I didn't have one. I don't think.
You didn't save enough from your time at Wendy's to get a clean
Now you're mixing. I mean, and look I get that.
I'm
this
not
all
saying
happened.
you could afford it. I'm not saying that.
No, I'm actually saying like the starter jacket thing was way before I worked at Wendy's. The starter jacket was like, it was when I was a young kid. It would have been like, I needed my parents to get me that or ask it for Christmas or something. I don't think I might. Here's the thing. I might have had one. It was it's a long time ago, but I don't have a memory of having one. Okay. But yeah, I think, look, the other part of that, and I know there's tons of Sabres fans, don't get me wrong, but if it's a Canadian Sabres series, I think you'll get a fair bit of both teams' fans being able to get in the building for at least some of the games. I'm not saying it'll be 50-50 or anything like that, because as we saw even last year in the Ottawa-Toronto series, Ottawa managed to sell most of the home tickets to their own fans. But, there's an element of both teams when the cities are that close together, which is, this is, I got to say, we have to be tipping our hat. We can't be arguing one way about playoffs and the other. This is also part of the NHL strategy with divisional playoffs, right? Is having, more geographic, closeness to these early matchups. So, anyway, it'll be a heck of a lot of fun, no matter how it shakes out. I'm sure some of the writers, whether they be in Montreal or Buffalo, are not upset about the possibility of their team playing Tampa and getting a few games down there during the playoff run.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For those who are curious, if the playoffs ended today, Buffalo-Montreal would be a thing. We'd get a Battle of Pennsylvania, which I don't know if we've had one since 2012.
That's crazy series.
That's still one of the most that's insane. Just watching that on TV, it felt like every game.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that series had an 8-6 game.
They had so many high scoring games, so many fights, so much animosity. That's one of the best first round series I've ever seen.
And Jágr was on the Flyers side of that one.
Yeah, he was.
Jaromir Jágr is like making all these appearances in this episode just randomly.
we did this like in between periods at like Sens games, we do like intermission trivia, and like Jaromir Jágr came up as an answer to a question. I think it was like name all of the. I don't remember the question. I'll come up with the question at some point. But Jaromir Jágr was an answer to that question that was posed. So Jaromir Jágr has been on my mind since at least Sunday.
So you wanted to name all his teams?
No,
I could do that.
What, like Pittsburgh, Washington, the Rangers, Dallas, Philadelphia, Calgary's in there because he ended his career in Calgary. Who am I missing?
Florida and New Jersey.
Oh my God! Yes. Okay. All right. I was close. Thank you for tapping into the Jaromir Jágr experience for all of 2 minutes.
Who's in charge at the intermissions of coming up with the questions? Does it rotate, or is it one? Is there one
rotates.
quiz master? Okay,
it rotates. I've asked questions before. Different reporters like Alex Adams, Callum Fraser, Evan McCoy. They've come up with questions.
Who's
Some
the
of
best?
younger
Do you
guys,
think of answering? Like, who's the strongest participant?
the strongest of like in terms of answering
getting
questions?
the most questions right, basically.
I would probably say it's usually like one of the OGs. So like Evan, TSN 1200 host AJ Jakubek also does a pretty good job of questions and also answering too. Every now I'm kind of weird where like sometimes there's like some obvious ones I like stumble on, but then randomly I'll just drop Antero Niittymaki and everyone's like, what the hell? And it's like, that's the right answer.
Right.
Like I could shoot my shooting from three is good, but like
You're unpredictable.
I'm very unpredictable.
You hit the odd big shot, but then you miss the layup or whatever, you know?
Yeah, hey, that's happened sometimes, but when I hit, I hit.
That's
Trust
good.
me.
Hey.
That's good. I'll take it. CJ, it's starting to get milder and warmer outside. It's time to get rid of the heavy layers, wear some cool threads. Don't think I didn't notice you with your quarter zip from Mac Weldon. It looks really sharp.
Thanks, man. I mean, this is my favorite time of year. No jacket season, but this quarter zip is perfect. It's breathable, man. You're not going to sweat in this thing, but it's perfect for when you get to the between season temperatures where you're not sure what you're going to get. Keeps you warm, but it breathes nice, which I love. And, got to be honest, I whipped it out over the weekend and took a nice walk with the family in it.
It looks really nice. And if you want to look real nice, like CJ and myself, Mac Weldon has you covered. They've got stuff like stretch twill chinos. They've got great button ups, quarter zips, as I just mentioned, that will keep you looking sharp from morning coffee to dinner date and everything else in between. Discover upgraded basics and fresh styles and more at macweldon.com. Plus, you can get 20% off your first order with the code CJ. That's MACKWELDON.com. And the code is CJ. And you can get 20% off your first order of $125 or more. Again, the promo code is CJ. Picture this. It's late at night. You're scrolling through all of your social media feeds and you see that one thing you've been searching for literally forever. I know for me, it's like a pair of shoes or a really cool t-shirt that I need in my wardrobe. And then I go to the website, I add it to the cart, and maybe I shop around a little bit more. And then I realize I don't have my credit card around. So annoying. But then I see it in the distance, that purple shop button that has all of my information saved, making checking out as simple as a tap of your screen. That is life with Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, from household names like Allbirds to brands just getting started. And if you get stuck, Shopify can help out with its award-winning 24/7 customer support service. See less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/Johnston. That's shopify.com/Johnston. I'm going to say it one more time. Shopify.com/Johnston. Anyway, sidetracked from the rest of the Eastern playoff race. Tampa also clinching a playoff spot. The Canadiens, I did mention a little earlier, they have a chance at winning the division. Up until that loss against the New Jersey Devils on Sunday, they had won 8 in a row. And a lot of people are looking at this team and they're wondering, like, hey, like, is this team actually good enough to go on a run? I mean, maybe it's a little early. I'm not asking for predictions, but what do you think of the hype being built around the Montreal Canadiens right now?
I think it's real. I mean, look, all of their impact players, in my eyes, have like taken a step this year. They're a better version of what they were last season. You know, a lot of it's just, and that's not a criticism where they were last year. It's just they're a young team that's growing. And you know, the question mark for me has been the goaltending, but obviously Dobish has been very good lately. But it still feels like mildly unpredictable, I would say, what they're going to get in a playoff series there. But, you know, they also have Jacob Fowler. I mean, look, I don't have to stretch very hard in my mind to see them, you know, winning a few rounds. That's not a prediction yet, because I really do want to see what the bracket looks like. But, you know, just on the surface, if they win the division, they're likely to get a weaker opponent, not necessarily, but likely with one of the wild card teams. And then if they can win that round, then round 2, they're getting the winner of what would be Buffalo Tampa, if that's the way it goes. Like I can sketch out a playoff run here. I mean, I think there should be certainly, I mean, any excitement around the Habs and their fan base, like that's, to me, it's warranted. And the East, I still think is, I don't know if I can pronounce it wide open, but it's open. Like it's, somebody gets hot at the right time. And look at, if you're talking about a team that's won 8 in a row or 8 of 9 now, I mean, that's getting hot at the right time, right? If they can finish the season strong, you know, I think winning the Atlantic probably gives them the best path to, you know, a longer spring, and then just keep the vibes rolling. If you get some saves, I mean, why not? Certainly that team scores enough. Cole Caulfield chasing down 50 goals, and Suzuki's had a monster year. Slavkovsky's taken a jump. I mean, to me, they have all the elements you need to have success at playoffs. It's just a matter of, you know, getting everything together at the right time. That seems to be what's happening there.
I know it's not quite Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa in the late 90s, but I am excited about the prospect of watching an epic goal chase come down to Nathan MacKinnon and Cole Caulfield for the Rocket Richard Trophy. Nathan MacKinnon, 51 goals, Cole Caulfield, 49. For the first time, I can't think of any other year where I've seen this, but this is the first time I've seen people look at a goal scoring chase and be like, well, hey, the guy I'm rooting for hasn't scored at an empty net all year. All of a sudden, we give a damn about goals being scored against the goalie versus empty net goals. Like, I've seen more of that because, of course, there are people I still follow in Montreal, but I've seen that along the internet over the last couple of days. I don't know how much you've seen that, but I have seen that when it comes to Cole Caulfield.
Honestly, I think it matters, though. I'm not goal's the goal, but let's face it, the best goal scorers also score a lot of empty net goals. Like Alex Ovechkin has always scored a lot of empty net goals, but it's like he also scores a ton of goals on a power play and at even strength. Like he just scores. But you know, I think especially when I look at heart races, and if you're looking at points, like there have been some years there's been a huge imbalance between empty net points, and they are unquestionably easier to get empty net points than points scored against the goaltender. You know, same as even strength points or even strength goals sometimes factor in. Like I'm not saying one, you know, you have to weigh it all. But you know what? That's not a qualifier for this trophy. The trophy is who scores the most goals this year. That being the Rocket Richard, and we'll see who at the end. I mean, even the Art Ross Trophy for points is really close with McKinnon, Kucherov, and McDavid as well. So, you know, the individual hardware will probably go down to those last couple of games. It'll be interesting. A team like Colorado that probably isn't going to need to win games at the end of the year just because they've put enough points in the bank. Do they rest someone like McKinnon, or do those awards, you know, matter? I mean, I don't have a hot take there. I would have no problem if he wants to play and put forth the best season possible. A pretty special year he's had and the team's had. And at the end of your career, winning a Rocket Richard and winning an Art Ross Trophy, you know, all that stuff does matter, and it does add up in terms of going to a Hall of Fame. Although something tells me Nate's not going to have any trouble when it's his time.
Yeah, I think he'll be all right with that. And also, thank you for making my point for me. If we're talking about the nuance of awards and even strength points, I get it. Like, you have to account for stuff like that. For a goal scoring chase, like, just get the goals wherever you can, man. Like, I don't care. I have no dog in the race, but like, I don't care if it's an empty net goal or not. Get the goals, get the opportunity to score. If Cole Caulfield scores the 50th goal and the puck comes off his like arm or like his like thigh and in, people are going to celebrate it regardless. Like, I just think people are just kind of overselling that, but that's just my
I remember
take
in Austin Matthews'
morning.
rookie year, his first empty net goal was in the last game of the season to hit 40. So he'd scored 39 against the goalie and then he got 40 into an empty net. You know, look at Ovechkin. I'm pretty sure Ovechkin, I mean, look at, he has the most goals ever, but I also think he has the most empty net goals in history too. I mean, it's, I'm not using that against him. I mean, it's God. I mean, we know what a scorer he is.
We do.
Also, scoring into an empty net usually ices a game. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know people do the early goalie pull now, so sometimes you're giving your team a 3-goal lead or a 4-goal lead, but, you know, scoring into empty net, those can be valuable goals in terms of, you know, finishing off an opponent too.
Yes. Very well said. Any thoughts on the wild card race as it is? Boston as the first wild card spot. Ottawa currently above the Islanders, the Red Wings. By the way, did you watch that Minnesota-Detroit game on Sunday?
Back and
Craziness. Unbelievable.
It was 4-1.
It was 4-1. Wait a minute. That sounds familiar. Anyway, Columbus and Washington also have a chance at the wild card. What do you make of the fact that we have as many as 5 teams with a legitimate chance of getting that second wild card spot?
I mean, it's not comfortable for any of the teams that are out now. And you know, Columbus has lost a few games lately. Obviously, Detroit had a tough March. But I mean, I don't know which way it's going to go. I mean, it's literally flip a coin time for, you know, when it's that tight. You know, I'm sure it has been this close, but this feels even closer than normal because you also have teams. It's not just the two wild card spots potentially in play, although Boston does have a nice cushion there. I think they should be okay. But you know, they still need to win a couple games to officially get the X beside their team name. But you've also got the third spot in the Metro up for grabs, right? So it's on a couple levels what's going on, at least for all those teams that are in the Metropolitan Division. I mean, how about Philadelphia? You know, I wasn't counting on them being in the race, and they've had a hot run to get into a playoff spot as of this morning. You know, Washington's been up and down. They're sort of on the fringes of a tough beatdown they took Sunday at Madison Square Garden at the hands of the Rangers. But, you know, they're trying to get in. We don't know what the future holds for Alex Ovechkin. I mean, it's going to be a compelling last week and a half here of the NHL season. Obviously, we're getting into award season now too, where, you know, the ballots will be going out soon and, you know, people will be deciding who the winners are. And then the real thing gets going a week and a half from now. It's just crazy. The season flew by for me, honestly. It flew by.
You think it flew by for you? I feel like it. I don't know if I feel that. I feel it's just, I don't know how to describe it. The time it took is the time it took. I don't know if it flew by. I mean, but that's just me.
Everyone has their own perception of time, right? I became a father. Maybe that factored in, but even with it being an Olympic,
that's true.
Even with it being an Olympic year, I don't know. I just feel like, I mean, even it's a month since trade deadline. Like, how did that happen? Now, again, it's probably because I'm up in the middle of the night every night changing diapers, and it's just like it's all a bit of a blur. But it definitely, my perception is this season whipped by.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I wish the season whipped by a little faster. I feel like there's just been enough going on. It's been a month since I wrote a book, since my book came out. And
yeah, I'm like, you've been on the book tour. I figured that should have blurred up your year enough.
Yeah, that blurred it up. That felt like just like all that is like a silo, and everything else surrounding it has just been a whole other experience for the good. Nothing too bad, but yeah, it's been a very interesting last couple of months. I just want to say, and I know we'll probably bring it up on Thursday, but the weekend to come, the Capitals have a home and home against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And considering we don't know what the future holds for Alexander Ovechkin, those two games on Saturday and Sunday are pretty significant.
But they probably won't be eliminated by then. Like, I've seen people suggest this, but they also play a game at Columbus at the end of the year. Yes. That could matter. So everyone is wondering, like, trust me, it's on my mind too. And I don't have any insight at all into what else Ovechkin's thinking, but in terms of his future. But it wouldn't surprise me if the decision didn't come until after the season. But those games, no matter what, if he hasn't declared anything, those games will just sort of be special because everyone will know that it might be the last time. Doesn't mean it is, but there'll be an idea that it might be the last time. And then, of course, he's hoping they still play home playoff games too. So like it's just kind of I won't say it's awkward. But it's hard to know how to view all this. I'm reminded though of 1999 when Wayne Gretzky, he basically didn't confirm he was retiring until the day before the last game of the regular season. Now the Rangers that year weren't making the playoffs. It started to leak out the second last game of the season. Actually, Gretzky was playing in Ottawa that game. And I remember like people were starting to talk about it and, but it wasn't officially confirmed by him until the day before the last game of the season. And then, of course, there was a lot of pageantry that went with that. Here is another Easter egg. Jaromir Jagr scored the overtime winner in that game. Was Pittsburgh beat the Rangers the last game of the 99 season. That secured Jagr, I believe, the scoring title that year. And anyway, the Jaromir Jagr Easter eggs just keep popping up. But point is that there's a reason to tie those two legends together and say we didn't know what was happening really with Gretzky at the end of that season until we did. And I'm not predicting a retirement though. I really do not know. I mean, Ovechkin's over 30 goals this year. Again, a number of them in empty net variety, but still, we'll see. We'll see what he decides.
By the way, the trivia question I was trying to remember, name all of the 50 goal scorers since the turn of the millennium. That was the trivia question. And Jaromir Jagr had done it in 2000, 2001 with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Well, I'm sure the Ottawa crowd will know that Danny Heatley did it in that same time frame.
I believe at least one of those years he did it was in 07. I believe. So I've heard. Any thoughts on the Ottawa Senators? They had a really big win on Sunday over the Carolina Hurricanes. I know there's been a lot of white noise around them, but they still sit in a playoff spot as we're talking.
For sure. I mean, look, I've been on record. I expect them to make the playoffs. It's hard to know, they put themselves in a difficult spot because they've been chasing for so long, right? And when you're chasing, you just don't have a huge margin for error. But they're there right now. We'll see. It was a busy week, but getting that win over Carolina was important. I know my brother-in-law and nephew were at the game, so they're pretty excited. Big Senators fans. So always in our family, there's a lot of focus on the Senators, and it would be massively disappointing, obviously, for that organization if they're not able to get in, but see if they can take care of business here the last 10 days of the season.
Yeah, I was of the opinion for the last couple of weeks that they would just miss. I'm starting to change my tune a little bit. I know they've got a couple tough games coming up with Tampa. They get to play Florida again. They have the Islanders and the Devils on the weekend. And then there's that April 15 game against the Leafs. But I don't know. I think they could get some results in those next couple of games. It's just they need to heal up as fast as they can on the back end. I believe they've used like 13 different defensemen since the Olympic break. So at least they have Jake Sanderson back.
To use 13 defensemen in a year is a lot. To use 13 defensemen in a month and a half is crazy.
Absolutely insane. I don't know.
But like an entire season, that is above average. Like I don't know what the average would probably be 10 or 11. I'm just guessing for what you would expect to use over a season between play and injuries. But 13, like teams are not thinking as when they go to training camp, you're not like who's 13th on the depth chart because like you don't expect whoever that person is to see them in Ottawa, right? Like you expect them to spend the year in Belleville and be basically a bottom pairing defenseman in Belleville or even a scratch almost. So
or an ECHL defenseman.
Right. So, I mean, kudos there, but that's also what it is, right? Like that's, injuries are a factor. They're not the only team that's going through them. But it's the worst timing between the Shabbat injury, losing Sanderson for most of March. Like, I'm not going to deny that might be the final. If they miss by a point, we might look back on the whole season and be like, those were just the two losses at the time that they couldn't overcome. Or maybe they get back in and we're talking about Shabbat's working his way back in the lineup. I mean, that's what you got to hope for if you're a member of the Senators organization.
Man, they've got some tough games coming up, but it's going to be fun. I know that for sure.
And they control their own destiny.
They do. Now, That was really good. That was a really good booming voice. They control their own destiny.
Well, we mentioned it earlier about, I think, the Islanders. But yeah, any of these teams win out, and we're in a position where you can win out. Like, it's not crazy to say win 4 games in a row. You're probably in of that group. I can't imagine like 3 or 4 of them winning out all at the same time, in part because they all play each other too. So,
yeah. We can briefly spend some time on the Western Conference. I know we got to get to some questions for Ask CJ. But just with the way that last wildcard spot is looking with Nashville tied on points with LA, they play each other tonight, tonight being a Monday, Nashville holding the tiebreaker on regulation wins, but Nashville, LA, San Jose has a chance, St. Louis has a chance, Winnipeg has a chance, Seattle's falling fast. I don't like their chances at trying to get into the playoffs, but a little bit of a different type of chase going on in the West, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, like 85 points might secure you the last wildcard spot, depending on how this, the race to the finish goes, or the crawl to the finish. I mean, LA is interesting. They played over 30 games that have gone to extra time this year. It's a wild stat. But they've lost a lot of them of late. I know they beat the Leafs in overtime on Saturday, but a couple more wins in the 3-on-3 or the shootout, and they would be in a much more comfortable position. Kind of funny that a lot of the teams you mentioned there, like Nashville, St. Louis, those are the same teams we were talking about being sellers at the deadline. Yeah. Indication Nashville, they did sell off some depth pieces. The Blues didn't move as much out, but had discussions obviously on some of their top players.
Yeah, they almost did. Even
the Jets. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. Hellebuck's found some form though of late, which obviously helps their chances. Yeah, it kind of is what it is in the West. Like I'm not down. Like, look, getting in the playoffs matters, and it's exciting for your fans, and somebody's got to claim those spots. You really don't want to get the last spot because that means you're going to face Colorado in round 1. But Utah is right now in the wild card number 1 spot. I mean, that right now lines up with, I think, Edmonton, in the Pacific. But there's a route through the Pacific for somebody if you can catch Utah, which it may not be possible because I think they've got a little bit of space built in there. But look, in San Jose, they're not going to turn that down. The one thing San Jose has is they've played the fewest games, so they actually have more games to play, games in hand on the teams ahead of them. If they can take care of their own business, Celebrini and company would get in. And I know there's a lot of focus on whether that could help him get the Hart Trophy. I don't know where I land on that. Like it's definitely a valid conversation, but I still feel like one of those 3 guys at the top of the league, like they have basically 20 more points than him, 16 to 20 more points than him. I like the narrative part of it, and I realize that Celebrini scored so many more points than his next highest player on the Sharks. He's got 48% of their goals this season have been off his points. Like I understand the argument, but I'm not sure he was the best player this season. So, anyway.
but the award is most valuable player.
I know,
Isn't but by I still definition, think right?
Well, the most valuable player to his team, but I still think. Are you telling me Connor McDavid? I still think Connor McDavid might have been more valuable to the Oilers. You know what I mean? Like
1,000%.
Anyway, I'm certainly not down on Celebrini, the player. I've seen like some people have gone out there and they've said explicitly, like if they get in, I'm voting for him, and I'm not sure I'm in that same crowd. I mean, certainly he's on the list of players I'm considering, but I don't think he can get to number 1 on my list unless, who knows, maybe he goes Galaxy the next 6-7 games that they have left, and I still think it's likely my vote goes to a Kucherov, McKinnon, or McDavid, though.
And I think that's totally valid. I just think personally, as someone who has a vote too, just having Celebrini on a Hart Trophy ballot is cool in and of itself. And if he finds a way to bring his team to the playoffs, does that automatically make him the MVP? I got to really think about it. But I definitely am at a point right now where I'm like, I think there's a pretty good chance he ends up getting like a 4th or a 5th place vote. Like,
sure. I think he'll honestly, I think he'll get some one like from, I've seen, I'm not going to name names, but I've seen some pretty veteran reporters say on the record, if they get in, I'm voting for him. So, that suggests to me he's going to get 1st and 2nd place votes too. I don't know that I'm not ready to go there personally.
That's okay.
And look I've been excited about this player. Like even way back before he made the Olympic team, there just was some promise there. Anyway, it's been a great season for him. I certainly don't want to be seen as chipping away at his candidacy. I mean, talking about a teenager, man, it's crazy.
You're not chipping away at his candidacy. I do think what's going on with this argument is like, I think it's cool that people want to vote for him to be the guy. I think a lot of this is just like, hey, is this guy good enough to even be considered for the Hart Trophy? And I think that's what the discussion should be framed at. And I think the fact that we're even having this discussion, that is a positive to the player and not a negative. So you just even thinking about it, like, no one should take this as a slight at Macklin Celebrini. We all know how talented he is. We've all seen what he's been able to do throughout the NHL regular season. If anyone thinks like, oh man, like you out here hating on Macklin Celebrini, they can go kick rocks.
They don't live in our group chat if they're thinking that.
No, they don't do that at all. Anyway, I have a couple questions for Ask CJ. I just want to check in just because, you got the Blue Jays hat on. I know they had a tough series against the White Sox. It's 162 games. You all right? You good? You good? Be all right?
I'm fine. I'm fine. That's generally. It was not a fun weekend. I mean, I watched all 3 games. You expect, I'm watching those games against the White Sox, expecting everyone to start getting on track. Vladdy hits a homer on Saturday, but yeah, it's not feeling good. You're seeing Alejandro Kirk go down, some of the injuries to the rotation. Like the vibes are not high heading into the World Series rematch to start this week, but I am also aware of where we are on the calendar, and I still believe in my team. I just would have liked the opportunity was there to be like easily like 7-2, just with getting the Rockies, the A's, and the White Sox out of the gate, and we're a long way off 7-2.
Right. One question I want to get off here from Pokelim. Actually, no, not from Pokelim. I'll get to this one from Colin. What is the most out-of-pocket thing Steve Dangle has texted you out of the blue?
What does out-of-pocket mean?
That's a good question. I think there's 3 different definitions of out-of-pocket. There's paying out-of-pocket. There's wilding out and saying something that's a little crazy. Or the third definition, which I've learned through my time at The Athletic, when you're just like,
yeah, I thought it means office. Like you're not away, like you're not your way is what I thought it meant. Anyway,
yeah.
Steve Dangle texts me all kinds of random ass shit. It's just the truth. Like, I'm not even going to go in there and start reading the stuff because I don't know what he's using it for. But he'll be like, "Hey, do you know who the agent is for?" And like mention a prospect I've never heard of. Like, I need to go to like Hockey DB to be like, "Who is this guy? Is this a player? Like, what is this?" I don't know what goes on between his brain. I know that there's a lot, and it's usually like Leafs. But Steve, you never know what you're going to get from him. But I'm always happy to hear from him. And it's usually, I would say 90% of our texts ever have been hockey related. And often he's asking a question I don't even have the answer to because it's so specific and random and I don't know where it's coming from.
I just realized I didn't even ask you anything regarding to the Leafs today. I mean, if you don't have anything, but also there's always something. Any update on that GM race? We should probably have a note on that. It was
suggested to me, Keith Pelliot said he wants someone in place by the end of May when the draft combine happens. Someone over the weekend mentioned they could see the search actually going a lot quicker than that. So, I wouldn't call it a firm update, but it might suggest this doesn't go on as long as we're expecting. Haven't heard yet what the search firm is the Leafs are going to engage with, but the expectation was they'd have that in place here, within a week. So sometime this week, I think is safe to assume. Why that's significant is it might give us a hint at the type of people they'll identify based on past. And the search firm does help the Leafs basically, or whoever hires a search firm, vet candidates, identify specific things. And the other thing I'd heard is that they hadn't yet requested, to speak with anyone formally through an NHL team, because odds are they could be hiring someone or trying to, conduct interviews with people under contract to other teams. So there's kind of an official process that has to happen there. So, what I gleaned from that is that they're, obviously it's off and running. It's been a week since they fired Brad Treliving. So, things are moving. But, they haven't progressed too far deeply into that search, and that makes sense to me. So we'll see. We'll just see. Look, we know all the talking points here, that they're moving towards data, that they're going to look at a lot of people around the league that I think, have backgrounds in analytics and other things. And, we'll see if we get a more formal list of candidates here at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I know Sonny Meda's name out in Florida has been brought up a lot. I mean, not getting you to drum up a potential list of candidates.
Look, he makes a lot of sense based on the data. Makes a ton of sense for me. Centric comment, right? I mean, he worked in New Jersey. He's been in Florida. Obviously, the Panthers have won a couple Stanley Cups, and he's been part of the front office that did that. He's an assistant general manager. So, he does have executive experience in the league. And, he's known as one of the handful of people that have, helped push analytics, further in the game and has that experience. Like that's the other side of it. There's just not a lot of people with the experience working with the numbers and have experience working in front offices. So, he makes a lot of sense but I would never want to position at this point that he's going to get the job or that he's the front runner. I mean, I think it's too soon. Even quite honestly, if Keith Pelly was on here with you, I'm not sure he fully knows the front runner. I mean, they might have a wish list, might include people already working somewhere else, so they don't even know if they can get that person. There's still lots to be worked through before we know who the next Leafs GM is, or head of hockey operations, as they were calling it, because the title might not end up being GM. But we'll just see where these things go.
Would you want Keith Pelly as the first guest on the CJ show?
I mean, based on that press conference, I'm in.
It's the most excited I've ever seen.
I think the content would be good. I mean, and at the end of the day, we're trying to put out interesting and good content for our listeners.
Okay. Also, sorry for the impromptu Leafs corner in the middle.
No. I mean, CJ. We forgot it during the show. It's early on a Monday morning for those out there. If anyone wants behind the black box, we're not at 100% yet this morning.
Nah, I'm glad we can acknowledge that. Mikey wants to know if the Washington Capitals somehow get in and get into the Metro 3 spot, who wouldn't want to see Caps versus Pens first round in what could be Ovechkin's final year?
Nobody. I don't even think the Penguins would mind that, to be honest, in terms of a matchup. And obviously the league would love it for being able to hype it up. I think fans, in those cities would love it, but even we'll call them neutral fans of other teams, I think that would be a compelling, matchup, even if you don't have a rooting interest in the outcome. And a chance to really, I mean, I guess this is what you were hinting at too, with the home and home coming up this weekend. It's a chance to sort of truly celebrate what's been, one of the driving storylines for 2 decades in the league is Pittsburgh, Washington, OV, Sid. Obviously we've moved beyond some of those points with the new wave of players since then, but Sidney Crosby over the weekend, first player ever in NHL history, 21 straight point per game seasons he secured.
Amazing.
Ovechkin, I can't remember how many 30-goal seasons, but it's all of them, a lot of them. I think he only missed 1 year in a lockout shortened year. These guys have been flag bearers for the league. They're among the top scorers all time. Ovechkin's a top goal scorer all time. And we know we're getting to the end. And so if they win, if it is the last season for Ovechkin and they played in a playoff series, be pretty special, but Washington's got to get some wins in the bank here to make that happen. They're facing an uphill climb to that spot.
Absolutely. One last one, Pokelem, since I almost skipped over this question, I'll get to yours. It's actually a question for me. Just noticed the top shelf of Funkos recently. Which ones are they? So I don't know if you noticed this, CJ, but above my head, there are these little like marionettes.
I've noticed them. I don't know what they are. I know they're like a toy or something, but are collectible.
Yeah, I just thought they were cool for a little bit. I know people think they're like nerdy. These are the only ones I have. But I didn't want to like go to the back and get them. But off memory, Mario Lemieux. Eddie Murphy as Axel Foley from Beverly Hills Cop, Tiger Woods, and then Black Panther and Killmonger from the Black Panther movies. And this is not a Funko Pop. This is a bobblehead of Tommy Lasorda that I got from Dodger Stadium. He's just there was nowhere else for me to put him, so I just put him
it's
in
like,
that row.
It's like your man cave, even though I don't think you're in a cave.
No.
It's your sports lair.
Yeah, I like sports lair. My office sports lair. I could probably do more to make this more sportsy, but that'll be done in time, I guess. Anyway, thanks to everyone for tapping in on today's edition of the Chris Johnston Show. We'll be back with a brand new episode later this week. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. And CJ, great work as always.
Thanks, pal. Have a great week, everyone.
Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Hey, did you like the thing you just watched?
Was it hilarious? Was it informative? Was it me losing my mind?
Possibly. Potentially. Most of the time it is. Hey, listen, if you like what SDPN has to offer, you should check out more of our videos and subscribe to our channel by clicking subscribe, or Steve will find you.